Before diving into this poignant journey of rediscovery and strength, ask yourself, what happens when a husband's cruel words lead his wife to the limit? Can a public insult become the spark that reignites the true spirit of a woman? If you are ready to witness a shocking transformation and a daring recovery of dignity, then hit like on this video right now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications for more inspiring stories. And tell us in the comments where you are watching from. We love knowing how far these stories travel. Part 1. The emergency button. The rain was falling hard that December night when Alexander Vance heard his phone ring. Little did he know that answering that call would change 3 lives forever. But no one imagined what would come next. Alexander Vance adjusted his Italian silk tie while reviewing quarterly reports spread across his mahogany desk. At 32, he had built Vance Industries from the ground up, turning a small tech startup into a multi-million-dollar empire. The floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan penthouse office offered a stunning view of the city lights. But tonight, the December rain fell like tears. His assistant had left hours earlier, and the building was silent, except for the rhythmic drumming of the rain against the windows. Alexander preferred working late, fewer distractions, more focus on the business that had made him one of New Youngest tycoons. The iPhone on his desk buzzed insistently. Alexander looked at the screen, expecting to see his lawyer's name, or perhaps his business partner calling about the merger they were finalizing. Instead, the caller ID showed an unknown number. Typically, he ignored such calls, but something made him hesitate. The phone kept ringing with an urgency that seemed almost desperate. Against his better judgment, Alexander slid to answer. Vance speaking. What he heard next chilled him to the bone. "Please, sir, please help us!" A tiny voice sobbed through the phone. It was a little girl, her words broken by tears and fear. "We're so hungry and it's so cold, and nobody wants us anymore." Alexander straightened, his business instincts immediately replaced by something deeper, a human concern he rarely allowed himself to feel. "Sweetheart, where are you? Where are your parents?" "They left us." The girl's voice cracked. "Mommy said she couldn't take care of us anymore, and she drove away. We've been hiding in the alley behind the big store with the red sign, but we're really scared. Lucy and Valerie are crying, and I don't know what to do." The desperation in the girl's voice cut through Alexander like a knife. He found himself standing, pacing behind his desk, as the rain continued to lash the windows. "How did you get this phone, sweetheart? What's your name?" "I'm Sophia. I'm 7 years old. We found this phone in the trash can, and I remembered the emergency numbers they taught us at school. Your number was the first one that showed up when I hit the emergency button. Please, please don't hang up on us, too." The other numbers just beeped. Alexander felt a knot in his throat. 3 abandoned children, reaching out to strangers because they had nowhere else to turn. His mind raced through the possibilities. Call the police, call social services, delegate this to someone else, and return to his reports. But the sound of muffled crying in the background, presumably from the twins the girl had mentioned, made those options seem cruelly inadequate. "Sophia, listen to me very carefully. I am going to help you and your sisters, okay? Can you tell me exactly where you are? What does the store look like?" "It's big, and it has a red sign with white letters. There's a picture of circles. We're behind it, by the boxes where they throw away food. Lucy found some old bread, but it was all moldy and made Valerie sick." A Target store. Alexander knew exactly what she was referring to. There was a large Target 15 minutes from his office. He was already grabbing his keys and coat, his reports forgotten on the desk. "I'm coming for you right now, Sophia. Stay exactly where you are and keep your sisters close. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I'm in a black Mercedes, and I'll come through the back way where you are. Don't go with anyone else, okay? Just me? You're really coming? You're not just saying that?" The hope in her voice was devastating and beautiful all at once. Alexander was already in the elevator, his heart pounding with an urgency he hadn't felt since his own childhood nightmares. "I promise you, sweetheart, I'm coming right now." As the elevator descended to the parking garage, Alexander realized he had no idea what he was getting into. He had never dealt with children, never even babysat as a teenager. His life was boardrooms and balance sheets, not scraped knees and bedtime stories. The Mercedes roared, and Alexander drove out onto the storm-drenched streets of Manhattan. Through the windshield wipers, the city looked different somehow, less like a collection of business opportunities, and more like a place where children could get lost and forgotten. His phone, now connected to the car's Bluetooth, transmitted Sophia's voice through the speakers. She was talking to her sisters, her tone soft and reassuring despite her own fear. "It's okay, Lucy. Valerie, don't cry. The nice man is coming to help us. He has a car and everything." "What kind of car?" one of the twins asked, in a voice so small Alexander had to strain to hear it. "A fancy one?" Sophia replied. "Like in the movies." Alexander found himself smiling despite the seriousness of the situation. When was the last time he had been excited about his car for any reason other than its investment value or status symbol? To these girls, it represented hope. Rescue from a nightmare he couldn't fully comprehend. "Sophia, are you still there?" "Yes, sir. We're still here. Do you have any food in your car?" The innocence of the request struck Alexander like a physical blow. When was the last time he had been truly hungry? He tried to remember and couldn't. Even during his earliest struggles building his company, he had always had enough to eat, a warm place to sleep, people who cared about his well-being. "I'll get you food as soon as I get you somewhere safe," he promised. Just a few more minutes. As he pulled into the Target parking lot, Alexander realized his hands were shaking slightly. He had negotiated multi-million-dollar deals without a tremor. But the thought of 3 abandoned children was crumbling his usual composure. The lot was almost empty, just a few scattered cars from late-night shoppers near the entrance. He drove to the back of the building where the loading docks and dumpsters created a labyrinth of shadows and hiding spots. His headlights swept the wet asphalt, and then he saw them. 3 small figures huddled behind a large cardboard box, barely visible in the gloom. The oldest, presumably Sophia, held the 2 younger girls protectively against her chest. They were soaked, their thin clothes offering no protection against the December cold. Even at a distance, Alexander could see them trembling. He parked and got out into the rain, immediately feeling the icy water seep through his expensive suit. None of that mattered now. As he approached the girls, he could see their eyes reflecting his headlights. Large, frightened, but with a glimpse of hope that broke his heart. "Sophia," he called softly. The older girl looked up, and Alexander felt the world tilt slightly on its axis. She was beautiful, as children are naturally beautiful. But there was something more, an intelligence in her dark eyes that seemed to go far beyond her 7 years. Her brown hair was matted and wet, her face smudged with dirt and tears, but she held herself with a dignity that impressed him. "Are you the good man from the phone?" she asked, her voice smaller in person, but still holding that remarkable composure. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm Alexander. These must be Lucy and Valerie." The 3-year-old twins were identical, with the same dark hair and eyes as their older sister, but they clung to Sophia like frightened puppies. "One of them has been sick," Alexander noticed. There were stains on her clothes that spoke of illness and neglect, that made him clench his stomach with rage toward whoever had abandoned them. "Can you really help us?" Sophia asked, and Alexander heard years of disappointment in that simple question. How many times had adults failed this child? How many promises had been broken? Alexander knelt in the rain-filled alley, ruining his $1,000 suit without a second thought. He was now at their level, close enough to see they were even more malnourished than he had initially perceived. Their faces were gaunt. Their clothes hung loose on their small bodies. "I'm going to help you," he said firmly. "All three of you. But first, we need to get you warm, dry, and fed." "Okay." Sophia nodded slowly. Then she whispered something to her sisters, in a voice too low for Alexander to hear. The twins looked at him with large, solemn eyes, then back at Sophia. Some silent communication passed between them, and finally, Lucy and Valerie nodded too. "They're scared," Sophia explained, "but I told them you have kind eyes." Alexander felt something shift inside his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with temperature, and everything to do with being trusted by someone who had every reason not to trust anyone. He helped them up, surprised by how light they were, how fragile. As they walked toward his Mercedes, Alexander realized this was the moment his carefully ordered life would change forever. But looking at Sophia's determined face, as she helped her younger sisters into the back seat, he found he didn't care about the complications ahead. What he didn't know was that this rescue was only the beginning of a mystery that would unravel everything he thought he knew about family, fate, and the extraordinary power of love to transform even the most broken hearts. As they drove away from that rain-soaked alley, none of them could have imagined the incredible journey that awaited them, or the shocking truth that would ultimately bind them together in ways that defied all logical explanation. Part 2. The Exceptional and the Exposed. The warmth of Alexander's Mercedes seemed to wrap around the three girls like a protective hug. Through the rearview mirror, Alexander watched as the twins gradually stopped trembling, their small bodies finally relaxing against the heated leather seats. But it was Sophia who held his attention. She sat perfectly upright, her dark eyes taking in every detail of the car's interior with a curiosity that seemed almost analytical. "Lucy, look," she whispered to one of her sisters, pointing at the digital screen on the dashboard. "It shows the outside temperature and the inside temperature, and it even knows which direction we're going." Alexander glanced back, struck by her observation. Most 7-year-olds would be overwhelmed by the trauma of their situation, but Sophia was studying her environment with the methodical attention of a young scientist. It was remarkable and slightly unnerving. What kind of childhood had taught her to be so observant, so careful? "You are very smart, Sophia," he said gently. "You like learning how things work." "I like understanding everything," she replied simply. "When you understand how things work, sometimes you can fix them when they break." The profound sadness of that statement was not lost on Alexander. This child had learned early on that she couldn't rely on adults to fix what was broken. She had had to figure out her own survival. "Where are we going?" Valerie asked, speaking for the first time. Her voice was tiny and raspy, likely from crying, and possibly the illness that had weakened her earlier. Alexander realized he hadn't fully thought through his next steps. His penthouse wasn't child-proofed, and he had no idea what they needed beyond the basics of food and shelter. But he knew one thing. These girls needed medical attention, proper food, and warm clothes above all else. "First, we are going to have a doctor look at all of you," he said. "Then we'll get warm clothes and dinner. How does that sound? A real doctor?" Lucy's eyes widened. "With a stethoscope and everything?" "A real doctor," Alexander confirmed, pulling into the emergency entrance of La Paz University Hospital. The irony was not lost on him. He had donated millions to this hospital's children's wing, but tonight was the first time he himself brought children there. As they crossed the automatic doors, Alexander felt the stares of the staff and other patients. He was clearly out of place, a man in an expensive suit with 3 visibly homeless children. But he had long ago learned that confidence and determination could overcome almost any obstacle. "Excuse me," he said to the receptionist, a middle-aged woman, whose kind eyes focused immediately on the girls. These children need medical attention. They have been without food or shelter, and one of them has been sick." The woman's professional attitude immediately shifted to one of concern and efficiency. "Of course, I'll call a pediatric nurse immediately." She leaned down to speak to the girls. "Hello, little ones. We're going to take very good care of you." Within minutes, they were in a warm examining room where a kind pediatric nurse, Marta Sanchez, began her assessment. Alexander watched from a chair in the corner as she took the twins' temperatures and listened to their hearts and lungs. Valerie, indeed, had the beginnings of pneumonia. Nothing life-threatening if treated immediately, but serious enough to require antibiotics and careful monitoring. Lucy was dehydrated and malnourished, but otherwise healthy. However, it was the nurse's examination of Sophia that proved most interesting. "This is fascinating," Marta murmured to Alexander, while Sophia was distracted helping her sisters drink juice boxes. "She has an exceptionally high resting heart rate, but her blood pressure is normal, and her mental acuity is off the charts. She's helping me translate medical terms into layman's terms for the twins." 2 hours later, they were in Judge Evelyn Hayes's chambers, an unusual late-night hearing that required several favors, and the compelling testimony of Dr. Torres regarding the children's immediate needs. Judge Hayes, a severe woman in her 60s with silver hair and penetrating eyes, listened intently to the situation. "Mr. Vance," she said finally, "I will grant you emergency temporary custody for 72 hours. During that time, Child Protective Services will conduct a full investigation and home inspection. If everything is in order, we can discuss longer-term arrangements." Alexander felt a rush of relief, but Judge Hayes wasn't finished. "However, I want to be absolutely clear about the responsibility you are taking on. These children have been through significant trauma. They will require counseling, educational evaluation, and ongoing medical care. If you are not fully committed to their well-being, it is better to let the state handle placement now." "I am committed, Your Honor." Judge Hayes's severe expression softened slightly as she looked at the girls. Sophia held the hands of both her sisters, and all three looked at Alexander with expressions of cautious trust. "Very well. I will see you all back here in 72 hours. Leaving the courthouse near midnight, Alexander realized he was now responsible for 3 lives entrusted to him by accident and fate. He had no idea how to be a father figure, no experience with bedtime routines or childhood fears, or any of the 1,000 daily details that childcare required. But as they drove through the quiet streets of Manhattan toward his penthouse, Alexander heard Sophia whisper to her sisters, "He really saved us. We're going to be okay." And for the first time in years, Alexander felt he was exactly where he was supposed to be. What he didn't know was that the next 72 hours would reveal secrets about these girls that would challenge everything he thought he understood about coincidence, fate, and the mysterious ways that the people who need each other most are found. The biggest revelation of all was yet to come. Part 3. The high IQ and the high stakes. Alexander's penthouse had never felt less like a home than it did at 3 in the morning with 3 exhausted children in tow. The sleek modern furniture, the carefully selected artwork, and the minimalist design that had once represented his success now seemed cold and unwelcoming through the eyes of children who needed comfort more than sophistication. "Wow," whispered Lucy as they stepped out of the private elevator into the main living room. Her small voice echoed in the vast space with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the New York skyline. "You live in the clouds." "It's the 52nd floor," Sophia said matter-of-factly, walking immediately to the windows and staring at the city lights. "That makes this building approximately 620 feet tall, assuming standard 12-foot floor heights. Are those real stars or just airplane lights?" Alexander stared at her. Most 7-year-olds would be overwhelmed by the height or excited by the view. But Sophia was calculating architectural specifications and distinguishing between celestial and artificial light sources. Dr. Torres's words about exceptional development resonated in his mind. "They're airplane lights," he said gently. "You can't see many real stars in the city because of all the electric lights. It's called light pollution. That's why the indigenous people could navigate by the constellations, but modern people can't," Sophia replied, still studying the view. "We traded natural navigation for artificial illumination." Valerie, meanwhile, had discovered Alexander's sectional leather sofa and ran her small hands over the soft material with awe. "It's like petting a cow," she announced, which made Lucy laugh. The first truly happy sound Alexander had heard from any of them, the sound of children's laughter in his space, was both strange and oddly comforting. Alexander realized his apartment had been silent for too long, filled only with the sounds of business calls and the hum of electronics. The presence of these 3 small lives made the space feel more alive than it had been in years. "Are you hungry?" he asked, though he already knew the answer from their earlier medical exam. His kitchen was rarely used for anything more than morning coffee and the occasional takeout container, but he was determined to figure something out. "We don't want to be a bother," Sophia said quickly. The same protective instinct resurfaced. "We can wait until morning if you don't have food." The fact that a 7-year-old was trying to manage his convenience spoke volumes about their past experiences. Alexander knelt to their height, something he was learning to do instinctively. "Sophia, listen to me. You are not a bother. None of you are. You are my guests, and taking care of guests means making sure they have everything they need, okay?" She studied his face with those remarkably mature eyes, then nodded slowly. "Okay. Lucy and Valerie like ham and cheese sandwiches. I can make them if you show me where the things are." "I think I can manage sandwiches," Alexander said with a smile. "Why don't you explore a bit while I handle the kitchen?" As the twins wandered the living room, touching surfaces and marveling at everything from the voice-controlled sound system to the automated blinds, Sophia positioned herself where she could watch both her sisters and Alexander simultaneously. Even in what should have been a safe environment, she remained vigilant, ready to shield Lucy and Valerie from any potential threat. Alexander's kitchen, though beautiful, was clearly designed more for show than function. He found bread in the freezer, only slightly freezer burned, and thankfully had a jar of jam his housekeeper had left. As he worked, he noticed Sophia had moved closer, watching his every move. "You don't cook much, do you?" she asked, without malice. "No," Alexander admitted. "I usually eat at restaurants or order takeout. I'm learning that's not very practical with children." "I can cook some things," Sophia offered. "Basic things. Eggs, pancakes, canned soup. I've been looking after Lucy and Valerie for a while." The casual way she mentioned this responsibility broke Alexander's heart. How long had this 7-year-old been acting as a parent to her younger sisters? What had her life been like before tonight? "You can tell me about your family," he asked gently as he spread ham on the bread. "What happened before you called me?" Sophia's face closed slightly, a defensive mechanism he was beginning to recognize. "Mommy said she couldn't take care of us anymore. She dropped us off at a gas station and told us to wait, but she never came back. We waited 2 days, then started walking. 6 days ago. We found places to hide at night, and during the day, we looked for food and tried to keep warm. Lucy got really scared, and Valerie got sick from some spoiled milk we found, but we were managing fine until tonight, when it started raining so hard." Alexander forced himself to keep making sandwiches as he processed this information. 3 girls, the youngest only 3, had survived on the streets of Manhattan for almost a week in December. The fact that they were all alive was a testament to Sophia's extraordinary competence and determination. Sophia, that was incredibly brave of you. Most adults couldn't have taken care of two small children in that situation. She shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. They're my sisters. You look out for your family. The simple statement carried profound implications about loyalty, responsibility, and love that humbled Alexander. In his business world, familial loyalty was often conditional, based on mutual benefit or social obligation. But Sophia's devotion to Lucy and Valerie was absolute and instinctive. He finished the sandwiches and brought them to the coffee table, where Lucy and Valerie had discovered his tablet and were staring at the screen, mesmerized. "What's this?" Lucy asked, touching the screen with a finger. "It's a tablet," Alexander explained, sitting down with them. "You can watch movies, play games, or read books." "Read books?" Sophia appeared instantly. Her interest was piqued. "Like real books with stories?" "Thousands of them. Would you like to see?" For the next 20 minutes, as the twins ate their sandwiches and dozed off against the soft sofa cushions, Alexander showed Sophia how to navigate the tablet's digital library. Her absorption was complete and immediate. She deciphered the interface faster than most adults, and her book selections were astonishing. She skipped the children's picture books entirely, gravitating instead toward young adult novels and even some adult fiction. When Alexander gently suggested something more age-appropriate, she looked at him with patient tolerance. "I've already read most of the children's books," she explained. "The library in our old town had a good selection, and I read everything twice in the children's section. I like books about people who have to solve difficult problems." Alexander pulled up a reading level assessment and watched in astonishment as Sophia scored at a high school level. Her comprehension, vocabulary, and analytical thinking were extraordinary, not just advanced for her age, but genuinely exceptional by any standard. "Sophia," he said carefully, "has anyone ever talked to you about being gifted?" She looked up from the tablet, her expression cautious. "Some teachers said I was smart, but being smart doesn't help much when you don't have a home or enough food to eat." The pragmatism in her voice reminded Alexander that intelligence, however exceptional, could not shield a child from the harsh realities of abandonment and poverty. But it did explain her remarkable composure and survival skills. She had been using her intellectual gifts to keep herself and her sisters alive. By 4 a.m., all three children were asleep. Lucy and Valerie had cuddled together on one end of the sectional sofa, and Sophia had strategically positioned herself at the other end, where she could see both her sisters and the apartment entrance. Even asleep, she remained protective. Alexander covered them with blankets from his bedroom and settled into his chair to watch over them. The enormity of what he had taken on was beginning to sink in. 3 children, one with exceptional intellectual needs, all dealing with trauma and abandonment. He had sub 2 hours to prove to the court system that he could provide adequate care, and he had no idea where to start. His phone buzzed with a text from his assistant. "Saw your court appearance alerts. All okay? Need me to cancel tomorrow's meetings?" Alexander looked at the sleeping girls and replied, "Cancel everything for the rest of the week. Emergency situation. I'll explain later." Another text came immediately. Should I be worried? Alexander considered how to answer that. Should he be worried? He had just upended his entire life for 3 little girls he had met hours ago. Girls who would require years of care, support, and guidance he wasn't sure he could provide. But looking at them now, Sophia's face serene in sleep, yet one hand still protectively touching Valerie's shoulder. The twins breathing deeply and safely for the first time in probably weeks. Alexander felt something he hadn't experienced in years. A purpose beyond profit. A responsibility that mattered more than return on investment. "Everything is going to change," he texted back. but I think it's going to be okay." As dawn began to break over the Manhattan skyline outside his windows, Alexander dozed fitfully in his chair, one part of his mind already listing everything he needed to do. Find pediatric counselors, research educational options for gifted children, child-proof his apartment, learn about nutrition and bedtime routines, and the 1,000 daily details of childcare. But another part of his mind kept returning to the moment Sophia had looked at him with those remarkable eyes and trusted him enough to get into his car. Something in that trust felt like the beginning of something important, not just for the girls, but for him too. What Alexander couldn't have imagined was that in 48 hours, he would discover that their encounter was not the chance accident it appeared to be. The truth about why these specific girls had called his specific number would reveal connections that challenged coincidence and change everything he thought he knew about fate, family, and the mysterious ways that the people who need each other most find each other. The most shocking revelation of all was still waiting in Sophia's remarkable mind. A secret that would explain not only her exceptional intelligence, but why she and her sisters had been abandoned, and what their arrival in his life truly meant. Part 4. The Family Secret and the Fugitive. The morning brought a chaos for which Alexander's orderly life had never prepared him. He woke to the sound of Valerie crying and Lucy's worried voice saying, "Sophia, Valerie's fever is up again." Alexander bolted upright from his chair, his neck stiff from sleeping awkwardly. Sophia was already standing, her small hand pressed against Valerie's forehead, with the practiced efficiency of someone far older than 7. "Her fever is back," Sophia said calmly, though Alexander could see the concern in her dark eyes. "It sometimes happens with pneumonia. Dr. Torres said it might spike again before the antibiotics fully kick in." The fact that she remembered and understood the medical details impressed Alexander once more. But in that moment, his attention was focused on Valerie's flushed face and labored breathing. He lifted the little girl, surprised by how light and frail she felt. "We're going back to the hospital," he said, already reaching for his keys. "No!" Valerie's weak cry filled with terror. "No more hospital, please!" Lucy also started crying, and Alexander realized he had just triggered some traumatic memory. Sophia moved immediately to comfort her sisters, but her explanation to Alexander was direct. "Mommy used to threaten to leave us at the hospitals when we were bad. Valerie thinks if we go back, you will leave us there too." The casual revelation of this psychological abuse struck Alexander like a physical blow. How many threats and abandonments had these children endured? He knelt so all 3 girls could see his face clearly. "Listen to me, all of you. I will never, ever leave you anywhere you don't want to be. If we go to the hospital, it's only to help Valerie get better, and then we all come home together. I promise." Sophia studied his face with that unnerving intensity, then whispered something to her sisters in what sounded like a mix of Spanish and another language Alexander couldn't identify. The twins nodded, and some of the tension left their small bodies. "They believe you," Sophia said simply. "But can Dr. Torres come here instead? Valerie would feel safer." Alexander was already dialing. His money and connections had always been tools for commercial advantage, but now they served a higher purpose. In less than an hour, Dr. Torres arrived at his penthouse with a portable medical kit, accompanied by Marta Sanchez, the pediatric nurse from the night before. "This is highly irregular, sir," Dr. Torres said, as she examined Valerie on Alexander's sofa. "But given the girl's trauma history, it's probably the best approach." Valerie's fever had already begun to respond to the stronger antibiotics Dr. Torres administered, but it was Marta who made an observation that changed everything. "Mr. Vance," she said quietly, while the girls were distracted with the tablet. "I did some research last night on exceptional children like Sophia. There are specialized educational programs for the gifted, but they require extensive testing and evaluation. What kind of tests? Cognitive evaluation, psychological assessment, academic placement testing. If Sophia scores as highly as I suspect, she will need educational support that goes far beyond traditional schooling. Dr. Torres looked up from her examination of Valerie. There's something else. I ran some preliminary genetic markers yesterday as part of their medical screening. Sophia's results showed some unusual patterns that might explain her cognitive abilities. Markers associated with exceptional memory, pattern recognition, and linguistic processing. It's rare. Perhaps 1 in 10,000 children shows this combination. But there's more. Dr. Torres hesitated. The genetic markers also suggest she may have a heightened emotional sensitivity and susceptibility to trauma. Her exceptional intelligence might make her more vulnerable to psychological injury, not less. Looking at Sophia, who was patiently helping Lucy sound out words on the tablet, while simultaneously monitoring Valerie's breathing, Alexander realized the full weight of the responsibility he had taken on. This wasn't just about providing food and shelter. Sophia's extraordinary mind required specialized care that few people could understand or provide. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. The caller ID showed Paul Castro, his lawyer. Alexander, we have a problem. Child Protective Services wants to interview the girls this afternoon. And I've learned that the social worker assigned to your case, Carmen Lopez, has a reputation for being particularly thorough. She's going to examine every detail of your background and living situation. Alexander walked into his kitchen for privacy. What are you saying? I'm saying that being a wealthy single man with no childcare experience might not be enough to convince her you're the best placement option. She will look for any reason to place them in a traditional foster home. Then we need to show her this isn't about inexperience. It's about resources and commitment. Can you contact Dr. Ana Maria Gomez, the child psychologist? Alexander, she is one of the most respected specialists in the country. She doesn't take emergency cases. She will for this. Tell her I will fund her research program for the next 5 years, and she evaluates Sophia today and provides a recommendation for her care. Paul fell silent for a moment. You are truly all in on this, aren't you? Alexander watched Sophia gently adjust Valerie's position to help her breathe easier, her movements careful and intuitive. These girls had been caring for themselves and each other with no resources and no support. The least I can do is use my resources to properly care for them. 2 hours later, Dr. Ana Maria Gomez arrived, a distinguished woman in her 50s with silver hair and kind but penetrating eyes. Her reputation for working with exceptionally gifted children was legendary, and Alexander knew her assessment could decide his custody case. Mr. Vance, she said as Alexander ushered her in, I must admit your offer was persuasive enough to rearrange my entire schedule. But I want to be clear that I will not compromise my professional standards, regardless of the financial arrangements. I wouldn't want you to. I just want to understand what Sophia needs. Dr. Gomez spent the next 3 hours with the girls. She started with simple cognitive games that quickly revealed Sophia's exceptional abilities, then moved to more complex assessments that tested not just intelligence, but emotional maturity and coping mechanisms. Alexander watched from a distance as Sophia solved problems designed for teenagers, her small hands moving quickly in pattern-matching exercises while explaining her reasoning with a vocabulary that would impress university students. But it was her interactions with Lucy and Valerie that truly revealed her character. She constantly checked on them, included them in age-appropriate activities, and handled their emotions with remarkable skill. This is unprecedented, Dr. Gomez murmured to Alexander during a break. Her IQ is well above 160, possibly higher than we can accurately measure with standard tests. But more importantly, her emotional intelligence and protective instincts are equally advanced. She has been functioning as the primary caregiver for her sisters, and she is remarkably good at it. What does that mean for her education? Her future? It means she needs specialized support that traditional schools simply cannot provide. She could be reading at a university level within a year, but she also needs therapy to process the trauma of abandonment and the burden of premature responsibility she has been carrying. Dr. Gomez paused, watching Sophia help Valerie with a puzzle while simultaneously engaging Lucy in a counting game. Mr. Vance, I have worked with gifted children for 25 years, and I have never seen a combination of intellectual and emotional advancement like this. Sophia is extraordinary, but she is also fragile in ways that are not immediately obvious. She has been holding herself and her family together by sheer willpower and intellect. If that structure breaks, it won't break, Alexander said firmly. I won't allow it. Dr. Gomez studied his face. Can you provide the stability and specialized support she will need? This is not about money. It is about consistency, understanding, and long-term commitment to very complex needs. Before Alexander could answer, Carmen Lopez arrived for the CPS interview. She was a severe woman, in her 40s with short brown hair, and an expression that suggested she had seen too many well-meaning but unprepared guardians fail children who deserved better. Mr. Vance, she said sharply, settling into his living room with a thick folder of files. I need to understand why you believe you are qualified to care for 3 traumatized children, especially when one appears to have exceptional educational needs. The interrogation that followed was intense and thorough. Carmen asked everything: his work schedule, his living situation, his experience with children, his support systems, his long-term plans. Alexander answered honestly, knowing that any deception would be discovered and used against him. Let me be frank, Mr. Vance, Carmen said after an hour of questioning. Your financial resources are impressive, and your intentions seem genuine, but good intentions are not enough. These children need stability, routine, and caregivers who understand child development and trauma response. You are absolutely right, Alexander nodded. That is why I have already arranged for Dr. Gomez to provide ongoing consultation. I have hired a pediatric nurse for daily support, and I have enrolled myself in an emergency foster parent training course. I am also converting my apartment's guest wing into a proper children's area, with safety modifications and age-appropriate furniture. Carmen's eyebrows raised slightly. You have done all this in less than 24 hours. Money can accelerate some things, Alexander said simply. But the commitment to learn what I don't know and provide what they need, that has to come from here. He placed a hand over his heart. It was Sophia who sealed the decision. Carmen had been interviewing the girls separately, and when she finished with Sophia, the 7-year-old walked straight to Alexander and took his hand. She asked me if I felt safe with you, Sophia said quietly. I told her that for the first time since Mommy left us, I don't have to worry about looking after Lucy and Valerie all by myself. I told her you promised we would stay together, and that you keep your promises. Carmen looked at the 3 sisters. Valerie slept peacefully against Alexander's chest. Lucy colored happily at his feet. Sophia stood protectively at his side, and her professional demeanor softened slightly. I will recommend continued temporary custody, she said finally, but with strict conditions, weekly check-ins, continuous psychological support for all 3 girls, evaluation and educational placement for Sophia, and the completion of the foster parent certification within 60 days. Done, Alexander said immediately. As Carmen gathered her files, she paused at the door. Mr. Vance, I have seen many placements in my career. Most people who take on situations like these are overwhelmed within a week. These children have complex needs that will challenge you in ways you cannot yet imagine. Are you trying to discourage me? I am trying to prepare you. But I will tell you this. In 15 years of social work, I have rarely seen children respond to someone the way these three have responded to you. That is either great luck or something deeper. After Carmen left, Dr. Gomez completed her evaluation and prepared her report. I recommend a specialized educational program for Sophia, trauma therapy for all three girls, and continuous support for you as their guardian. But Alexander, there is something else I discovered during my assessment. Sophia has what we call perfect selective recall for specific types of information: dates, numbers, faces, emotional contexts. It's incredibly rare and means she can recall details about their past that could be crucial to understanding what happened to their family. Dr. Gomez gathered her materials, then turned to Alexander with a serious expression. I will ask Sophia some questions about her family history in our next session, but I want to prepare you. Children with her level of memory retention sometimes carry traumatic details that can be disturbing. We may learn things about their past that will be difficult to hear. That afternoon, as Alexander helped the girls settle into the guest rooms he had hastily converted into temporary sleeping areas, Sophia lingered after her sisters fell asleep. "Alexander," she said quietly, "Dr. Gomez asked me to remember things from before Mommy left us, but there are some things I remember that I don't think you should know." Alexander felt that familiar chill of premonition. What kind of things? Things about why Mommy was so scared all the time, and about the man who used to call her and make her cry, and about why we had to keep moving to new places. Sophia's dark eyes held secrets no 7-year-old should carry, and Alexander realized that his rescue from that alley had been only the beginning of a much larger, more complex story. The truth about their past was about to come to light, and with it, the shocking revelation that their encounter was not the chance accident it seemed to be. Part 5. The Truth Comes Home. 3 days later, Alexander stood outside Dr. Gomez's office, watching through the one-way glass as Sophia worked with blocks and drawings. Her small voice calmly recounted memories that were reconfiguring everything he thought he knew about his family's history. "The man's name was Richard," Sophia said, arranging colored blocks in precise patterns as she spoke. "He called Mommy every few weeks, and when he did, she would get very scared and start packing our things. We moved 7 times in 2 years. Dr. Gomez leaned slightly forward. "Did your mother ever explain why you had to move?" "She said Richard was my father, but that he was dangerous, and he would never find us. She said if he found us, he would take me away from Lucy and Valerie forever." Alexander felt his blood run cold. A dangerous father who had been pursuing these children. This changed everything about their abandonment. Perhaps their mother hadn't abandoned them out of neglect or inability to cope. Perhaps she had been trying to protect them from something worse. "Sophia," Dr. Gomez said softly, "can you tell me what your mother looked like and what name she used?" "Her real name was Elena Vance, but she used different names when we moved. She had brown hair like ours and green eyes. She was also very smart, but she was always scared. She used to cry at night when she thought we were sleeping." Alexander recoiled from the one-way glass, his heart pounding. Vance. Elena Vance. The name hit him like a physical blow, unearthing memories he had spent 15 years trying to forget. His sister Elena, who had disappeared when she was 22. Elena, who had been dating a dangerous man his parents had warned him about. Elena, who had vanished one night without a trace, leaving only a note saying she had to leave and couldn't contact the family for their safety. "Dr. Gomez," he whispered, I think Sophia might be my niece." The revelation sent shockwaves through Alexander's neatly ordered world. His sister, missing for 15 years, given up for dead by most of the family. His nieces, the children he had rescued, were not random strangers, but his own flesh and blood. the daughters of his sister, who had been living in fear and poverty only hours away in the same city while he built his fortune. Dr. Gomez immediately suspended the session and requested an emergency DNA test, but Alexander already knew what the results would show. Too many details matched. The family resemblance he had noticed but couldn't place. Sophia's exceptional intelligence, which ran in the Vance family. Even the way she tilted her head when thinking, exactly as Elena used to. If this is true, Dr. Gomez said, as they waited for the fast-tracked test results, it explains several things about Sophia's development. Exceptional intelligence often has genetic components, and trauma responses can be intensified in families with certain genetic markers. The DNA results arrived in hours, confirming what Alexander's heart already knew. Sophia, Lucy, and Valerie were his nieces, Elena's children, the family he never knew he had. But with that confirmation came a horrifying realization. If Richard was still alive, still pursuing these girls, then Alexander's penthouse might not be the safe haven he had thought. Taking the girls in had not only saved them from the streets, it might have put them directly in the path of the very danger their mother had died trying to avoid. Dr. Gomez convened an immediate conference with Carmen Lopez and Paul Castro. The revelation that the girls were Alexander's biological nieces greatly strengthened his custody case, but it also raised new concerns about their safety and their mother's fate. "We need to contact the police," Carmen said firmly. If Elena Vance was fleeing a dangerous man for 15 years, there could be active warrants or ongoing investigations. Paul was already making calls. Within an hour, Detective Laura Vega from the National Police Missing Persons Division arrived at Dr. Gomez's office with a file that made Alexander's worst fears seem inadequate. "Richard Martin," Detective Vega said, spreading photos and documents on the conference table. "Real name Richard Kowalski, but he's used dozens of aliases over the years. He is wanted for harassment, assault, and suspected murder. We've been trying to track him for a decade." The photos showed a man in his 50s with cold eyes and thinning hair. Alexander studied the images, trying to understand how his brilliant, beautiful sister had become entangled with someone so obviously dangerous. "Elena Vance filed a restraining order against him chapter 16 years ago," Detective Vega continued. "She testified that he threatened to kill her family if she left him, and that he claimed he would find her no matter where she ran or how long it took. She vanished 2 weeks after the restraining order was issued. And her children? Did she ever report having children with him?" Alexander asked. "No official record, but that's not unusual in stalking cases. Victims often hide pregnancies and children to protect them from abusive partners. If Sophia is Richard's daughter, and if he's been pursuing Elena all these years, he might know about the girls," Detective Vega finished. "He could also be looking for them, Sevilla." Alexander realized. "Mr. Vance, I have to be frank with you. Richard Kowalski has killed before. We strongly suspect he murdered 2 other women who tried to leave him, though we've never been able to prove it. If he finds out Elena's children are in New York under your custody, he will come for them." The weight of this revelation settled on Alexander like a physical burden. He had thought rescuing 3 homeless children was complicated. Now he realized he had inherited a blood feud with a dangerous predator who had been pursuing his family for 15 years. "What do we do?" he asked. "We protect them," Detective Vega said simply. "Full security detail, safe house if necessary, and we use every resource we have to find Richard before he finds them." But it was Sophia who provided the most crucial information. When Dr. Gomez gently explained that Alexander was their uncle, their mother's brother, Sophia's reaction was immediate and profound. "I knew it," she said quietly. "I knew you looked familiar. Mommy showed us pictures of you from newspapers and magazines. She said you had the same eyes as Grandpa, and that you were brilliant, like everyone in our family." Tears rolled down her face as she continued. She said if anything ever happened to her, we should try to find you. But she was so afraid Richard would hurt you if he knew about us. That's why she never called you, not even when we didn't have food or a place to live." The revelation that Sophia had been storing crucial information about Richard's whereabouts led to the final confrontation that ended 15 years of terror. Her perfect recall provided investigators with details that blew the case wide open. Not only Richard's current location, but evidence of his previous crimes that had gone unsolved for years. The arrest came 3 days later. Richard Kowalski, cornered in a Manhattan warehouse by federal agents, chose to resist rather than surrender. The brief shootout ended with Richard's death and the closure of a case that had plagued law enforcement for over a decade. Detective Vega delivered the news to Alexander at the hospital, where he had been keeping a vigil beside Alara's bed. "We found her," she said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of 15 years of investigation. "We found Elena. She's been in a coma for 6 days at St. Luke's Hospital, admitted as a Jane Doe with severe injuries from what appeared to be a car accident. But the forensic team believes she was beaten first. They found her 3 blocks from the target where you picked up the girls. We believe she dropped them off there deliberately, then led Richard away from them. She may have saved their lives by sacrificing her own." The pieces of the puzzle fell into place with devastating clarity. Elena had not abandoned her daughters out of inability or neglect. She had made the ultimate maternal sacrifice, leading their dangerous father away from them, even knowing it would likely cost her life. "I can see her," Alexander asked. "She's in intensive care. But yes, doctors say her brain activity suggests she might hear visitors, even though she can't respond." That afternoon, Alexander stood beside his sister's hospital bed, barely recognizing the broken woman surrounded by machines and monitors. Elena looked decades older than her 37 years, her face showing the scars of violence and 15 years of constant fear. But when he took her hand, her fingers moved slightly, and the monitors showed increased brain activity. "Elena," he whispered, his voice catching. "I have them. I have Sophia, Lucy, and Valerie, and they are safe. Richard can't hurt them anymore." Her eyes fluttered, but did not open. A tear slid down Elena's cheek, and Alexander knew she could hear him. "I'm going to take care of them forever," he promised. "They will have everything they need: education, security, love. And when you recover, when you can come home, we will all be together. The family we should have been all along." It was Sophia who insisted on visiting her mother, despite the doctor's concerns about the emotional impact. When Alexander brought her to the hospital room, Sophia approached the bed with the same careful composure she had shown in every crisis. "Hello, Mommy," she said softly, taking Elena's uninjured hand. "It's me, Sophia. Lucy and Valerie are safe. Uncle Alexander found us just like you said he would." The monitors showed dramatic spikes in Elena's brain activity, and her fingers squeezed Sophia's small hand slightly. "I've been reading lots of books," Sophia continued, her voice firm, despite the tears streaming down her face. "And I'm taking good care of Lucy and Valerie. They miss you very much, but they aren't scared anymore. Uncle Alexander has a big apartment with windows that look over the whole city, and we have our own rooms and all the food we want." Sophia paused, studying her mother's face with that remarkable perception that never failed to astound the adults around her. "Mommy, I need to tell you something important. I remember Richard's phone number. I remember where he said he was staying, and I remember everything he told you about his plans. I can help the police catch him." The revelation that Sophia had been storing crucial information about Richard Kowalski's whereabouts led to the final confrontation that ended 15 years of terror. Her perfect recall provided investigators with details that blew the case wide open. Not only Richard's current location, but evidence of his past crimes that had gone unsolved for years. The detective handed the news to Alexander at the hospital. "It's over," she said simply. "Richard Kowalski is dead. He can never harm your family again." The relief was overwhelming, but it was Elena's response that demonstrated the power of hope and family love. Within hours of learning Richard was dead, her vital signs began to stabilize. 2 days later, she opened her eyes for the first time in 3 weeks. The recovery was slow and difficult. The traumatic brain injury had affected Elena's speech and motor control, and she would need months of rehabilitation. But her mind was intact, and when she saw Alexander for the first time in 15 years, her first whispered words were, "Thank you for saving them." The reunion between Elena and her children was everything Alexander had hoped for, and more. Despite her physical limitations, Elena's love for her daughters was immutable and absolute. Sophia, Lucy, and Valerie surrounded their mother's hospital bed with a careful joy. Their family finally united and safe for the first time in their young lives. But it was the discovery in Elena's personal effects that revealed the final and most shocking truth about how this family had found its way back. Among her belongings was a mobile phone, old, damaged from the beating she had endured, but still functional. When Detective Vega accessed her recent calls, she found a discovery that defied all assumptions about coincidence and fate. "Alexander," Detective Vega said, her voice filled with awe. "Elena called your number the night she dropped off the girls. The call lasted 30 seconds, then disconnected. She never spoke, but she used that phone to make sure that when the girls found it and hit the emergency contact button, they would reach you. She planned the entire thing." The truth was breathtaking in its simplicity and profound in its implications. Elena had not abandoned her children to fate. She had orchestrated their rescue with the last conscious act before Richard found her. Knowing she might not survive their final confrontation, she had pre-programmed the phone to lead her daughters to the only person in the world she trusted to protect them. She planned everything, Alexander realized. Sophia, who had been listening with that remarkable understanding that never failed to amaze the adults around her, nodded slowly. "Mommy always had plans to keep us safe. She used to say that sometimes you have to sacrifice to save the people you love most." 6 months later, Alexander stood in the sunny playroom of his renovated penthouse, watching Lucy and Valerie build elaborate block towers, while Sophia read advanced physics textbooks from the specialized curriculum Dr. Gomez had designed for her extraordinary mind. Elena sat nearby in her wheelchair, her speech still halting, but her smile radiant as she watched her daughters thrive in the safety and love she had fought so hard to provide them. The custody hearing had been a formality, the blood relationship, the unlimited resources, and most importantly, the girls' own testimony about their happiness and security made Alexander's permanent guardianship inevitable. But beyond the legal formalities, they had become a true family, bound by trauma survived and love discovered. "Uncle Alexander," Sophia said thoughtfully, "do you think Mommy knew you would love us as much as she did?" Alexander looked at Elena, whose eyes filled with tears of gratitude and joy. Then he looked at the 3 remarkable girls who had transformed his life from successful but empty to meaningful beyond all measure. "I think your mother knew exactly what she was doing," he said softly. "She knew that love finds a way, even when everything seems impossible." And as the Madrid sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors outside their windows, Alexander understood that some miracles are not accidents at all. They are the result of extraordinary love, courage, and the unbreakable bonds that tie families together across time, distance, and every obstacle that tries to tear them apart. The lost call that had brought them together was not lost at all. It had been the final gift of a mother's love, ensuring her children found their way home, to the family they were always meant to have. Their story of survival had become a story of triumph, and their future stretched out, full of the infinite possibilities that emerge when love, intelligence, and determination combine to overcome even the darkest circumstances. The Vance family was finally truly complete.